Leptin is a hormone that's involved with satiety. Just like I've spoken about insulin and glycemic index and ghrelin, and how ghrelin comes from the stomach. When your stomach wants food, it secretes ghrelin, tells the brain time to eat, brain goes, hunts for food, and once the stomach is full, ghrelin stops, and your brain is supposed to say, okay, I'm full. Now it does take about 20 minutes. So that's the concept of, I've mentioned before in my other video on Hari Hachibu, that Okinawan saying that you're really supposed to wait. When you're 7/10 full, you wait about 20 minutes for the signals from the stomach, ghrelin, to get up to the brain and say, I'm good. If you don't wait for that time period, then that brain senses that you're still starving, and even if you're full, like Thanksgiving full where you had to unbutton the pant, when you're full and your brain is still thinking starvation and ghrelin hasn't reached the brain yet, you'll still eat some more. And within 20 minutes, I've seen people finish off an entire plate, another plate, full plate of food. So you should really wait, because at that point in time, when the ghrelin reaches the brain, you might be overly stuffed, 10 of 10 tenths full, and that's when you're in pain, and that's when usually insulin starts to be secreted. You get into a low blood sugar, and you start this wave of going up and down with your sugars and your insulin. So what I wanted to mention now is leptin. Leptin is another hormone, comes from fat cells. So if I was to eat something like this is my model that I bring to all my lectures. I have it in my office. It's a steak, egg, and cheese bagel, and it's from 2011. And it still looks pretty preserved. This is not in a vacuum. This is sitting out to air. It has been in my garage, but the bag broke down before the bagel broke down, and before the meat broke down, and before I can see the cheese broke down, so I had to put it in this thing. Anyway, this is not real food. This is fake food. I don't know what they use to make it look like a bagel or make it sustain that. It's now 2015, so 4 years of survival to make it look the same. I don't know what they put in it, but that's not real food. So when you eat something like that, you have the food break down into the stomach, it gets absorbed in the small intestine and then into the bloodstream, and then once all those calories are converted as macronutrients, are converted in the liver to fats, carbohydrates, proteins, it goes throughout the bloodstream, and it enters either fat cells, or it is produced or created to help with brain function, heart function, rebuilding of skin, rebuilding and fighting cancer. But if you're, again, if you're in fight or flight, everything goes straight into the fat cells. Now the fat cells are your adipose tissue. You have fat cells in the omentum, that apron inside the belly. You have fat cells in your love handles, in your tummy, and the fat behind the arm, the buttock, the thighs. So all those fat cells, when they're overly stuffed with a fresh amount of adipose tissue, then usually the fat cell will secrete leptin, and when leptin is secreted, it's supposed to go to the brain until the brain stops eating. Now, the problem with insulin, ghrelin, or leptin is that if you go through very highs and lows, you go through peaks and valleys, that's not healthy, and your brain sometimes has to protect itself, so it makes the brain either becomes insulin resistant, ghrelin resistant, or leptin resistant, or the cells in the body become resistant. When they become resistant, then that feedback loop, either the ghrelin talking to the brain saying satiety, or the leptin talking to the brain saying satiety, when it sends all those messages, then usually the brain won't listen, and the cells won't listen, and you won't have a sensation of being full, being happy, being satiated. So that means you'll still hunt for more food. Now you have that from bad food. You also have, there's an area in the brain, and this is all hormone, but there's an area in the brain called dopamine receptors, and they are stimulated to give you happiness. They're stimulated by drugs, by sex, by certain medicines, and also by food. So if the brain centers that say, I like what I just got after you eat one of these things, when you get rid of that, the brain will still say, I like what I just had before and I want more. So it's going to make you hunt for palatable juicy, fat, and sugary food, sometimes salty food. Well, if it doesn't have the signals of leptin coming out of the adipose tissue saying stop, or if it doesn't recognize those signals because the brain is now leptin resistant, then the brain will continue to say, I gotta eat, my fat cells aren't full yet, so that's when you, again, keep on hunting. And that's a broken mechanism because, truthfully, you're probably full of either crappy food or you're truly full of good food if you happen to partake in good food, healthy food, Mediterranean diet, anti-inflammatory diet. But again, the brain has to learn those cues again about it's full, adipose tissue's full, stomach's full, insulin is okay, so our blood vessels are full of glucose. So it has to learn that stuff. So again, the lecture is more on leptin and what happens when you eat crappy food, kind of what happens when you eat good food. But it's just an overall idea about what happens in the biology and the chemistry of hormones and getting hungry, waiting. Because I have a lot of people say, I'm not hungry, I can wait. But then, you know, in today's society, we have to have fast appeasing. You have to have fast satisfaction. Texting, you have to have immediate text back. You have to have answers. You don't want to wait and for the movie to get released. You want it released. You want to watch the night of. You don't want to wait for the iPhone to be released next month. You want to get in line at 3 in the morning and try to be the first one. So I think we're not used to pacing ourselves. And whatever happened to just waiting and having a little bit of hunger. A little bit of hunger is okay, but not starvation all day. So it takes a little bit of understanding about what happens inside your body to treat your body properly, especially in today's society. So just as long as you understand leptin, and again, I'll put links to glycemic index and relin, that you can balance this out, but it takes a return to wholeness and sticking with that for at least 90 to 120 days. I usually say 3 months, because it does kick in after a while. Some of these foods that will stimulate leptin properly on a regular basis, or stimulate ghrelin, or give you good levels of insulin and make cells all sensitive to insulin, ghrelin, and leptin again. Sometimes those diets have to be continued until the brain says, oh, I kind of like it. Because if you're used to having this stuff, and your brain is used to getting satisfied by this stuff, or Red Bull, or processed food. I'm across the street from McDonald's. I'm right behind Dunkin' Donuts. If you're used to all that stuff, even 10 packs of sugar in your coffee, then switching over to this is going to be a little challenging, because the benefits of good food take a little bit of time before they kick in. The benefits of bad food immediately rewarded. I think that's what the food industry is banking on. That we don't understand that, and they will profit, and if they profit, then we go and die. So you have to be cautious, and you have to be an advocate for your own health and the health of your family. So switching over this way would be the ideal way. Just empowering yourself with information is always the first key to the return to wholeness.